Hello and welcome to Blockchain Gaming World, episode 127. I'm your host, John Jordan, and joining me today is my cat buddy, Mike Levine. How's it going, Mike?
Excellent. Honored to finally be here. And a chair so many others have sat in.
So a bit about the hats. So I'm an advisor with Mike at Mystic Moose is the company, and Planet Mojo is the sort of the universe. We'll dig into all that sort of stuff. But I was joking with him. He said, "Why haven't I come on the podcast yet?" And I said, "You haven't sent me a hat." So he sent me a hat, and so he's on the podcast. It's really that simple.
And I said he doesn't have to keep it on the whole time. So
no, it's a bit weird that both of us have the hat. It seems like
yeah.
So I'll do an intro.
That's over shilling. We don't have. I can just chill.
Yeah. We are actually both wearing Nike tops, but my top doesn't have a Nike swoosh on it. But that's another thing. Anyway, enough whittering from me. So first question, as we always do. So Mike, we've known each other off and on for well, I think over 10 years now. Obviously, you've been in the game space making various games. So we met up when you were doing free-to-play mobile stuff, but you've basically made every sort of game sort of possible. So always good to get an intro into. You've made tons of games, dozens of games. How did the blockchain bit come about? How did that? Why was that exciting for you?
Sure. Well, I've told this story, I feel, many times, but yeah, we'd been in. I tend to gravitate towards the bleeding edge of tech, and sometimes that's fruitful, sometimes it's not, and you got to always be balancing those things. But yeah, after doing mobile early, we shifted into doing a lot of AR and VR stuff, and we worked with a lot of the biggest companies in that space and sort of saw that through as much as we could, at least currently with mobile, and then made the jump to VR a couple of years ago. We're making a VR game for Oculus, Sam & Max, still out there, another show. And but while we were making that game, really, and I've been looking at blockchain honestly, since CryptoKitties. That caught my attention, and I, at the time, looked at it a little bit and was like, I don't know. At some point, I saw some stat about the total amount of players, and I was very ignorant about blockchain, and I was just like, "This isn't ready yet,"
Yeah, well, probably not a bad decision.
Yeah, it was probably too early, exactly. Yeah. But when we were the second half of making Sam & Max, and I was waiting for builds, I just started reading about NFTs and what was going on. We almost made them for Sam & Max, but luckily Steve Purcell had more sense than I did, and I sort of sensed that, let's see how gamers react to these. This is kind of new, and we were sort of at least early in that thinking. But it didn't sort of stop me, and I just sort of kept learning more. And then finally it's like, oh, wait, there are blockchain games, and just started learning about what those were. But it wasn't like, I understood it overnight, because you go to websites with these projects that are worth millions and millions of dollars, and I'd literally be searching around like, am I missing something? Where's the game here? Like, how does this work? How did they get all this value without a game? And so, I've said this, I've been thinking about this today actually a couple of times, and I think this is true for any new technology you get into. And this just happened to be probably the biggest rabbit hole I've ever gone down, is like the first phase is like, you're just taking it all in. You're trying to learn everything. And then when you start making a project, you're just trying to decide, like, well, what's the roadmap? Like, what should we be doing? What's important? Oh, we need to do a white paper. Everyone says you got to do a white paper. It's like, where's your diptych? You got to get your diptych. So I'll leave that movie if people know what I'm talking about, but that movie reference. But yeah, there's a lot of that in this space. But then I think finally you move into phase two, and I realized this when I started to have opinions. I was like, wait, if I'm forming opinions, I must. You start to realize, well, especially with this space, all those rules that we thought were rules, a lot of them don't really matter that much. And you sort of go back to realizing we're creating this in real time. So like, we're looking at what other projects doing. People are looking at what we're doing. We're trying to like take the best ideas, experiment with them. Hey, this worked. This didn't work. And yeah, especially having a game, which we do, one of the reasons we chose this genre, and we wanted to get out ahead of this early, because we knew there'd be so much competition, even though I say competition in quotes in this space, because I really do. One of the things I do love about this space is there is so much collaboration, but we just wanted to get our game out early, get it in players' hands, and like as someone said earlier today, one thing that's cool about this space, but it's scary, is you're building in real time. You're building in public, and so we just had a pretty big tournament, our first public tournament, and the game's still in alpha. We're sitting here going, oh God. And it went off great. There was a couple bugs people found, but there weren't huge complaints. And this is sort of life in Web3, living on the edge. So yeah, that's kind of, to me, really, as I started to learn about it, though, and what was behind it, to me, it became obvious that this could be the future of gaming and should be in many ways. And I think, who knows how long it will take, but I think eventually the past generations are going to look back really and say, boy, you guys just played games and didn't own your assets. And when you were done with them, the money was just wasted. Really? And how much deeper it goes, because there's so much more to Web3 and all these things you can do. I don't know, but to a mass public standpoint, I think we can talk more about this. But yeah, I think it's looked at. You have to look at it through a different lens.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, so maybe you've sort of touched on a few things there, but maybe let's sort of set the scene for exactly what
I'm all over the place.
Yeah, no, it's fine. No. So correct me if I'm wrong, which probably would be embarrassing, but the sort of the overall title of the, I don't know, the universe, I guess we say, is Planet Mojo.
Yes.
And then within that, there's various sort of I guess sort of playable experiences. Is that a good way of?
I'll explain it.
You frame it.
I'll explain it. I feel like we're it's like the band Black Sabbath, but it's easier to understand. That was the name of the band. They had an album and a song called Black Sabbath. But no, the company's Mystic Moose.
Yeah.
The overarching IP world universe is Planet Mojo, and our first game is Mojo Melee.
Yeah. Okay. Cool.
And we promise every game won't have the title Mojo in it, so it'll be less confusing.
Well, there'd be more. Surely that would be more helpful if every game did have Mojo in it, because then you would.
It'll have it in some sense. We have the logo around it, kind of Star Warsy.
Yeah. And Mojo Melee was sort of the when you first were thinking about blockchain games, that was sort of the original game that you sort of wanted to make, in the game that you sort of thought was going to fit this sort of.
Well, honestly, yeah, I took months. We took months deciding what genre we wanted to start with. At one point, it was going to be a racing game. At one point, there was a few other genres we looked at, and one thing was I didn't see anyone making this type of game, or at that stage really. And it seemed like just a great fit for blockchain, with all the different assets and how you're introducing new characters all the time and changing the meta up and arenas. There's all these just different parts. Also, just looking at the landscape then of who was playing these games and looking at the Axie players, it's right. They weren't necessarily hardcore gamers, fast paced. I keep saying Twitch, but I don't mean the platform, fast reflex, real time shooters. And so we want to make sure we made a game that everyone could play in the space and that had universal appeal. We also just liked this genre. We had made Hollow Grid Monster Battle years back before this genre even existed. That was the AR game. We made it with Phil Tippett, and it was Apple's game of the day as an AR game, but we liked the genre. So when auto chess emerged, we were kind of like, hey, we know about that. And so we've always kept an eye on, and several of our team members play it, and they were the ones kind of pushing me like, Mike, we really should check this out. And the other thing about the genre too, just forgetting about the Web3 side of it, is we still think there's just a great opportunity with this genre on mobile, right? And we built it for web browser first, and we can talk why we did that. And we just think that was important for the Web3 side of things and wallet connection. But when you're bringing it to the masses and mobile, we feel is at least our path we've chosen. And this genre specifically, it had a huge spike when it came out a few years ago, but it really, those games came from the downloadable space. The most popular is Teamfight Tactics. And if you try to play it on mobile, matches can take 30 minutes, and the first time I played it, I was like, wait a minute, what? This isn't, mobile free to play. There really aren't and so no one has kind of cracked that code for mobile free to play of this. Supercell actually has been testing a version, for I think 6 months or more. And so we've looked at that too a lot. And it so we feel like just this genre alone has some interesting potential.
Yeah. I guess it's sort of in general, it is that sort of it's not a great term, but it's sort of that sort of mid-core. So it has some elements
Yes.
of some deep elements, but not like a trading card game that's so deep you have to be super committed to it. It has that sort of that nice sort of balance of addressable audience that you can you can have some quite deep mechanics in there, and a lot of depth, but you can also
No,
people
it is.
people
It's
know
like,
how to play straight away, sort of thing. It's not a big learning
it's
thing.
yeah. In our game, especially, people have said it's very easy to pick up, which we wanted it to be. And we definitely flipped the script on this genre, and part of that was because of Web3. Because we're like, well, wait a minute, these games usually have a shared deck, right? Which also some people say limits their conversion rate and people spending, because people don't have that agency. But from the beginning, we're like, well, wait, if people are going to own their assets, how's that going to work? Like and so we're like, well, maybe we could add in collection and team building to it, like a Hearthstone. And as we were building it, that's then Supercell came out with theirs, and that's exactly what they were doing. So we're like, aha, okay, we must be onto something here. And that it does add, like, the people who've played it a lot, just watching them and listening, it adds this whole dimension of strategy. And the thing is, every time we add a new asset, a new champion, a new spellstone, like, because you can combine teams, just like, oh, now you just made a new 1,000 team possibilities that we can try in different combinations. So yeah, I've known, some people say, oh, it has too much RNG. That's kind of the nature of this genre. But we've seen in our tournaments, like, the same players right up at the top. So they know something. They're obviously skilled and winning continually.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, so you sort of mentioned a little bit about some competition. I guess we have to maybe approach this one. So I guess in the space, in the blockchain sort of space, Illuvium is sort of one that sort of sat there for a while. Obviously, it's sort of morphed into various games that originally it was a sort of one-off auto chess game. But I mean, has it felt like to be, I don't know whether you consider yourself like David compared to Goliath or something, but they have a lot of mind share from
they do.
where they
I mean,
are.
they were out early. Yeah,
well,
I mean,
the project was announced early. The game's
yes, that is true.
I mean, is that been
I think,
easy competition, or does that?
I don't really
you
look at it as direct competition. No. In some ways, it is, but their game is, first of all, I think it looks gorgeous. I haven't played it myself, but obviously, and I don't know what their future plans are with it, but it's a very different experience. They're sort of combining this gigantic world roaming and collection, and then at least as far as what it is now, you're not actually playing other players. It's PvE. You're going into this sort of wherever world, and it looks cool. Like, we wanted to focus for our game, one, on just accessibility, like I said, like getting people into it really quickly. There's no giant downloads, but also just playing other players. That was the PvP. We wanted to have, and that's what we started out with right from the beginning, is having, like, we kind of tackled the hardest part first, which is multiplayer. And these games are actually, when we started, believe me, I thought, wow, we're not making a real time, like a first person shooter. This will be easier. No. Just the synchronization issues, just sort of keeping all the different players who are playing in different arenas at the same time. There's a lot we had to work out. I'm glad we tackled it early as opposed to waiting to the end like maybe Illuvium did, because it is kind of the hardest part. Now it's more just adding different gameplay types and meta and new champions. That's not as hard as multiplayer. And I'm not saying we're done with multiplayer. No. We have to make sure we can scale to tens of thousands, millions, hopefully, etc. But so far, so good.
So you sort of mentioned there you're sort of in an alpha stage. You want to dig a bit more in detail of sort of where you are with the project and what sort of assets are available and what sort of assets are sort of coming as well.
Well, first of all, you don't need NFTs to play our game. Nope. We've taken a very free-to-play approach, and as we're actually sort of adding in finally more of the blockchain elements to it for people who own the NFTs to have them in game. So up to now in alpha, we've really focused on the core battle stuff. We've been adding some of the other progression features, but really giving people all the assets and letting them play and sort of experiment with the different combinations. As we move into open beta, which is hopefully about 3 weeks away, we'll be taking everything away from everyone. People are going to love that, except, of course, if you own the NFTs. But then really we're going to be looking to test the progression systems. We have ranking and sort of a season tournament type modes in there. We hope to add a PvE sort of standalone, because some people get intimidated and just want to practice against bots. But yeah, it's really, that's what we sort of looking at as the next stage, is just targeting and looking at those KPIs that are so important in mobile and any game, just in terms of, user retention, LTV, conversion rates, all the fun stuff that UA people
that makes it work.
get very excited about. But it's critical. Just looking at our funnel, like, so on another call today, we got a big compliment because we have a tutorial in our game. I was like, okay, thank you. That's a first, but I'll take it. But yeah, it's just sort of like, we wanted to make sure there was onboarding, even if you didn't or do know this genre, just to give people an outlet. Like I think Skyweaver, we've seen other games like just have great tutorials you can do at your own pace and get rewarded for. So I think that's a great model too, that we can add more in the future.
You mentioned a few times sort of about sort of mobile and talking about sort of free to play mobile and all that sort of stuff. But then you also mentioned you're sort of you've built it for sort of browser now. So obviously, clearly that's an issue there with app stores. Do you want to talk a little bit about, where you are now and where you see that going, and maybe how?
Yeah, I mean, we came up with this strategy several months ago, and in this space, you got to keep your surfboard out because things are always changing. And when I would say we had that FTX moment, and that sort of just helped us refine our strategy a little bit. But I was listening to, what was it, the Navik podcast this past weekend, and the guy from Blast Royale was one of the hosts, and Shatterpoint was the other. It was great if you haven't listened to it. And they were just, and it was also Chris from Magic Eden. But yeah, their strategy, Blast Royale, he was sort of outlining what they've done, and they're in the App Store already. And I was like, okay, that's exactly what we're doing. So it was good to hear that others have, sort of organically found this path. And yeah, for us, just sort of taking a conservative approach on the mobile side. So the website has, wallet connection and all the NFT connections for people, and that's where our marketplace will live once that goes live, or that's where people will be able to purchase NFTs, and eventually we'll have that flow right inside the game. So actually MetaMask just announced, I think yesterday, their Unity direct plugin connection, which is pretty cool. But on the mobile side, especially post FTX, at least in North America and Europe, we're just taking this approach. We're going to start as a pure mobile free-to-play game. There's no advantage in terms of pay to win, in terms of owning the NFTs. In fact, we're going to sell the same characters as in-app purchases to people if they want to, quote, own them that way. But the idea is to treat it as a normal game there with a subtle link to people, and maybe we get a little more aggressive over time. It's just saying, hey, are you interested in owning your assets? Click here to learn more. Let them come to our website and sort of have a education for them, for people who don't know anything about this, to just understand the values of what that is. And this is a whole subject, and I think we're gonna have to just A/B test that part of it in terms of how much do you fill up that first spoonful? Because again, I go back to when I was learning about all this, and I'm literally I'm on the Kraken glossary, every single blockchain, where do I start, and all these terms. And I think we need to spoon feed people slowly. So that's going to be our approach.
So it seems like there you're suggesting, Apple have put out these terms and conditions about NFTs, and I've not seen anyone yet sell NFTs in app. Maybe people doing it, but you think that sort of, obviously that's the only approach you sort of can do, but you think that some people seem to be not doing that and just saying, oh, that's not so sure about that. But you think sort of how Apple have sort of set that. Rules out is sort of like, well, why not use those? Why not let people buy NFTs within?
Well, because once the rules came out, there's still a lot of lack of clarity about what they mean. I've read and listened to probably hours of people trying to understand them, and just having dealt with Apple and Google for over a decade, you sort of, I want to see how it plays out, right?
Yeah.
I want to see, like, because what they put in writing and then what they allow and reviewer to reviewer, it can be very different. And so again, like, we want to start almost really with nothing and just focus on the game and get that in people's hands, and then working with them and having relationships, understanding what we can put in. But part of this is also the sentiment right now, right? And we're also like, you know, we don't want to poison the well before people, you know, get to enjoy the game. And, you know, you can be review bombed, right? For people who just don't like blockchain games, if you're, you know, really going for a mass audience. And so we want to, you know, I've been looking at games like Nino Kuno Cross Worlds and other games that kind of have blockchain in them.
Could you find the blockchain in there? I couldn't even find the
Well,
blockchain.
see, but it's there for people who know about it. It's not in the game. That's the thing. But if you want to take advantage of it, Web3 people, and granted, no one in Web3 pays attention to it because it's on whatever, you know, Clayton or whatever they're calling it. But it's there for people who, you know, want to take that extra step, connect their wallets, kind of be able to, you know, take their tokens out, and they're not pushing it in people's face, you know. But hey, at the same time, we're talking to many partners in Asia and other parts of the world where all reports are the sentiments are quite different, right? Hong
Japan,
Kong,
South
Korea, South Korea is very bullish on this. And so we may have two different mobile versions.
Yeah.
That's very possible.
Yeah. No, it's a good point. There is. It's kind of funny because you say not that long ago it was very much like the, you know, Japan was very against crypto, and even now South Korea, the games companies are into it, but they can't do anything in South Korea. And obviously China was very against it, and Hong Kong was part of China. And it's kind of interesting how quickly sentiment in both those regions and North America, Western Europe has sort of flipped. Anyway, yeah, cool. And in terms of sort of assets, you got some stuff coming up with Magic Eden. So you're running on Polygon, probably should say that, and you're part of this Magic Eden sort of Polygon 2-week sort of gaming extravaganza. So do you want to talk a little bit about?
And they just announced their March Mint Madness or whatever it's called.
Mint Madness.
I think we're the first Mint Madness. Yes, thank you. Be correct. But yeah, apparently we're the first one to do that, I guess, or one of the first, because ours is this Friday. But yeah, I mean, Polygon's been a great partner. This was also a, you know, huge debate at the beginning of this. This is another one of these things when a Web2 company comes into this and you're surrounded by Polygon and Immutable and Ava and like, where do I go? And what am I? And it was a tough decision, but honestly, Polygon was just really supportive to us from the very beginning. Also helpful with fundraising for me and the company at the beginning. And as it's evolved and they've gotten bigger, they've just been incredible partner, bringing us amazing opportunities. Magic Eden was and is an amazing one, but they've continued to bring us some other things that are going to be amazing to talk about in the future as well. So they seem to have that mass market approach, but the other thing I love about Polygon is that they're not afraid of cross-chain. They embrace it. And that's very different, I think, than some of these others that really want to be more siloed. But and this is something that whenever we talk to another chain, I sort of have to, you know, tap delicately around this. But they usually do have a position about it, or they're going to be forced to. And the thing about us is, and maybe this just comes from our game background, and you know, you want to be on as many platforms as you can. And so we built our tech stack and our back end and our infrastructure to really support multiple chains. People ask us, what chain are you on? We're not really on any chain. We built a Web2, Web3 hybrid that can support multiple chains. We currently are supporting Polygon NFTs, but we hope to support other chains in the future.
Yep. You want me? Are you leading me on to the Mike? What changed? Is that one for another time? I know. I guess it is interesting because Polygon clearly has always been sort of part of that, sort of the Ethereum ecosystem. Obviously, being very EVM compatible and sort of being the first sort of scaling solution for Ethereum, sort of back in the day. I think at a point they did. There was some marketing these years ago that Polygon sort of were thinking about could they supplant Ethereum, and then I think they thought after a while, no, probably that's not the best move for us. So they sort of.
Yeah, I mean they have so
search
much
strategies.
going on, and their
Yeah,
ZK roll-ups
DKs.
and future stuff. We're pretty happy with the
Yeah.
choice we made. But yeah, the Magic Eden, working with them has been amazing.
Mm.
You know, I feel like when we started with them, they were kind of like, let us take your hand, and we will guide you through this. And
Yeah.
they've just done so many mints. They have so much experience, and
Mm.
we were like, okay, we will listen. And you know, they had just come off Boomland, right?
Yeah.
And they're
Yeah.
just like, look, this worked.
Yeah. Yeah.
Listen
No.
to us. And
Yeah.
so, you know, you'll see a lot of
Mm.
similarities in us following that playbook
Mm.
that worked for them.
Yeah. And it's actually interesting. I would say, Magic Eden obviously massively successful as a sort of the sort of place for Solana, but obviously when Solana sort of soured, there'd never really been a sort of good marketplace for Polygon stuff because it just wasn't big enough for OpenSea. I mean, technically they did it, but no one on OpenSea traded Polygon sort of assets. So you sort of had this gap in the market that even technically you could do it. And I guess could you do it on Rarible? Can't really do it on Rarible. I know, whatever. But it's all worked really well for Magic Eden that Solana sort of has dropped off, and they're like, what do we do? And at the same time, Polygon's like, we need somewhere to call our own. And so that's an interesting synergy that's happened really in the last sort of 6 months.
Well, and they brought them over with
Yeah,
D-Gods and things like that. Like the
yeah,
Solana
yeah,
people are still there, and they're like, hey, like I was on a Spaces with like Solana meet Polygon,
yeah.
and it was like this culture clash. And I
It's
think Polygon honestly is still figuring out what its culture is. Like it
yeah.
has a lot of games, but didn't have like that Solana
No,
NFT,
no,
which I don't know
no.
I don't
It's
think is
not
a bad thing.
exactly. So, I'm trying to get the actual details out of you. So, what are you actually what are you actually minting? So, let's go through sort of
Yeah,
assets that
yeah,
you have.
yeah.
How does
Okay,
this relate to the
so
game? Come on.
yeah. So initially people are going to get these just champion chests, we're calling them,
Yeah.
these nice gorgeous chests, and then in a couple weeks they'll come to our site to do the reveal, and then they'll get one of these
Okay.
4 new champions.
Okay.
And these champions actually have been in the game for the last few weeks, so people have been able
Okay.
to play with them, see which ones they like. These are the ones that we will be taking away from them. So
I see.
if
Right.
they get these in the mint, they will be able
Yeah.
to basically unlock them immediately, be able
Mm.
to use them in the game, and have access to, as we're implementing all our progression stuff, one of the things that we've built inside the game we call a collection tier system. And
Okay. Yeah.
to explain it very simply is the more NFTs you own, the more access to rewards you have in the game, right?
Right.
So we sort of look at, tally up how many of them you own, even the rarity of them. Some
Yeah.
things are worth more, like Mojos, and it's like, okay, here's what tier you're at. You get this many points this month, and that helps you unlock rewards, basically.
And the Mojos are the little sort of plant-based characters that were the original mint. That was
Yes,
last year,
those
wasn't it?
are,
Last year,
we have
yeah.
different, we have our Mojos, then we have champions. The Spellstones are currently only in-game items. They're not NFTs. We also have arenas in the game, which
Yeah.
may become NFTs someday, but
Okay.
we also, we've shown our land a little bit,
Mm.
and our land gameplay is actually about 80% done. So we hope
Okay.
to release
Mm.
that, again, we decided to not make 3 games simultaneously,
Yeah.
and wanted to make sure this one was really good.
Mm.
But that is something we want to release in, let's say the next 6 months or so. And
Yeah.
it's not a full game. It's more of like the home, your hub
Mm.
in between our other games, but it will have daily kind of casual gameplay and eventual
Mm.
social features, that
Yeah.
kind of stuff.
Mm.
But
Cool.
yeah, one other thing. Oh, sorry.
No, go for it.
I was going to tell you one other little alpha thing that I keep teasing today about. So when we do reveal these champions in a couple weeks, and we'll talk about it beforehand, without, I'm trying to just blatantly tease here because I don't want to reveal it, but these will be a new type of NFTs. And we feel this will be sort of part 1 of part 2 of what we're doing as we're kind of moving to these new types of NFTs. And we feel could be a game changer, at least for gaming NFTs and kind of the logical evolution of where they should go.
Okay.
And opens up all kinds of new things like UGC possibilities and more. So really excited to share this soon.
It's good. It's a good teaser. So for the champions, that's been run by Whitelist. Is that free? Is that paid? How are people get on the
It's
Whitelist?
free mint.
Okay.
There were 2 tiers of whitelist, and we worked with Magic Eden system, which basically has people come into our Discord and get assigned a role, and then when they mint on Magic Eden, they sort of attach the Discord and their wallet. And
Mm.
if you're in the first mint, you're guaranteed a spot.
Yeah.
Lasts a half an hour. And then the second part, which is it's 4 p.m. UTC on Friday, and 4:30 is the second phase, and that's first come, first serve. And we're hopeful they'll go fast.
Yeah. How many are there?
2,500 total.
Okay.
And then if you divide that by the
fast.
4 champions, you can do the math of how many actual each type there are. And part of the reason we did this too is, these actually will be part of our existing collection of champions. And this is the first time anyone's been able to sort of just mint a champion on their own, because before this, only the Mojo holders were airdropped them for free after the mint. So this will be the first, and they'll be quite unique.
And then you said you're going to open beta, so that's when these things will be actually playing. So that's pretty soon after, sounds like, timing-wise?
Yeah, we're trying to get there about 2 to 3 weeks, hopefully before I head off to GDC, which is now 3 weeks away. Oh my God. But our plan is to be an open beta on the web version, be testing that, and then follow that up, let's say 6 to 8 weeks later with the mobile version, which will then also be doing the same thing with, basically. And those are almost equally, if not more important analytics, but it'll be interesting to compare the desktop web version versus mobile analytics.
Just, aside from what you guys are doing, it does strike me how much activity there is in the sector at the moment. There's just quite a lot of projects that are in a sort of similar sort of development span, where they're in they've been sort of doing some testing for a while, probably a bit closed, and then they're sort of going to move into a more sort of open, at least for NFT holders or something like that. Partly I guess because people have been working on these games for 2 years, 18 months, so we're naturally in that sort of situation.
There's obviously a ton coming, and I think the next 6 months are going to be pretty mind-blowing in terms of what we see coming out. But at the same time, I'm also slightly skeptical, because I've lived through Apple glasses, and it's like, okay, just tell me when they really come out, the full versions. Are they not in alpha still, or if the vertical slice? It'll be it, because it's one thing to say the game's shipping in 3 months and to actually ship it in 3 months. And hey, this could be true of us too. Things take longer. So
and I think, as you sort of said before, I think the strength and weakness of blockchain games is you're sort of building a lot of this stuff sort of in the open, and you're building a lot of this stuff sort of iteratively. So, you may have some, in your case, you're going to have some, basically your PvP mode with probably some tournament structure around that, but you don't consider that the complete game, even of Mojo Melee. There's a whole bunch of other stuff coming, so it is very difficult to sort of judge when these things, are actually.
It's very, even in gaming, forgetting blockchain, there's just so many different philosophies. If you think about it, about when to release a game, there's a lot of companies in mobile who say, work on it for 3 to 4 months, put it out. Doesn't, just get analytics, get that feedback, be testing it, versus the other extreme, which is behind closed doors for 3 years and no one sees it. And there's all kinds of variants in between that. But that was different for us for this space, and we had to just embrace it early on. Especially the engineers, the art people, oh my God, we're releasing this. But it's relax.
Have you found that? Because that you worked on some big games. Sam and Max was the last one you worked on, a really well known sort of IP, but the sort of just the way you have to have community, you've had to adapt with community. We've sort of spoken about that. You're surprised at sort of having to deal with that. You obviously have done, you've done well. You've made those learnings. But was that sort of one of the things when you thought about making blockchain games, you thought about the ownership and how the bits would fit together, and maybe community. That's something you just sort of dive into.
We learn tons, and we're still learning. I remember 4 or 5 months in, after we were tweeting stuff, being told by Web3 people, stop, you're showing way too much stuff off. What are you doing? You've got to be build-ups and silhouettes. But we have all this amazing art. I want to show people this stuff. Stop. And so, we've changed our approach and strategy, but there is always that balance of you do want to constantly show off and sort of be open as you're developing. And it has been, especially for the development team, it's this isn't ready. And it's that's okay. We're going to this is why what's different about this space and where community is going to be more like they're helping us create this game. And, you know, the people who can see that, not like play it today and be like, what the hell is, you know, something's broken. It's like, look, we're not even in beta yet. Like, and luckily now the game is pretty stable. Like I said, like, this tournament was great, but like just even, you know, we launched in August first doing private testing, and we're all like sitting here, you know, crossing our fingers. So I think you just got to lean into that in this space. Even people who came from bigger companies, like it's just people just, that's what creates community in this space, because they just feel like they're part of the team. And that's one of the things, again, what attracted me to this space was like, this is the evolution of community in gaming. It's obvious because we've seen that over the last decade in gaming, Discord, everything. But now it's like this is the next step because they're owning part of the project.
I just wanted to, I don't know how much you can dig into it, but you mentioned sort of onboarding before, and obviously that's something people think about a lot in the space. And
yes,
it's sort of been a perennial sort of issue. And I think we've actually moved quite a long way on it, but maybe there's still there's sort of best practice, but there's still, I guess, no sort of really.
No, there aren't.
Okay, you tell me. So what are your views around onboarding? How are you gonna? Well, you said tens of thousands, millions of players.
I've changed them. You have to be flexible in this space. I think we're gonna experiment and try things. You know, right now in our browser version, when you make an account, you have to connect a wallet. Okay. We may remove that. I think Champions Ascensions just did that, right? They removed the wallet connection. And you know, my feeling though is on the web side, 99% of our players are kind of Web3 people. They all have wallets. But it's sort of a pain, right? Every game you go to, connect your wallet again. It's kind of like you shouldn't make. I just said this earlier too. It's like you shouldn't make people give a credit card before they've played the game. You know, like. Play the game first, give it a try. Oh, now you know. So I think you have to have but on the mobile side, like I think when we're going for that mass adoption, you know, I think we need to experiment with things there. At first, I was very much like, we don't want to make people wallets for them, you know, but behind the scenes or have them not know. But you sort of see the success of things like that happen. Well, we could debate about it, but the success of Reddit and what happened there. And I do think it is going to be important to sort of try that out and sort of give people wallets and the ability to, it's sort of there if they want to take advantage of it. If not, it's a lot of this too, you know, I've seen you write and talk a lot about DApp Radar too, and just the rankings there and active wallets. And, you know, there's a lot of, I think it's very unclear how their rankings work. Let's put it that way. And I think we can really look at it and get a very false impression of like, because, you know, from what I've gathered, it's not like if you look at the names on the surface, unique to active wallets, like coming from gaming, it's like, oh, okay, these are people to log in. No, it's really transactional based, right? And so you can have games that just have huge amounts of users that just aren't necessarily having the transactions to show up there. So anyways, there's so many factors that come into this, but I think for the onboarding part, it just has to be seamless to people. You know, we have to have social logins. And for us, we still feel, you know, custodial versus non-custodial. Like we don't want to take control of people's assets, right? Like we want to adhere to the sort of ethos of blockchain on that side. I think as soon as you sort of go the other direction, what's the point of all this? We're basically, you know, going back.
I mean, that's interesting because, but I mean, that has really been the debate for the last sort of, you know, as long as I've been in space, also 5 years. And even though sort of some of the tech that's now available, some of the sort of, you know, the walleting solutions and stuff is a lot better than it was, you know, 2018. But it's quite interesting that some people, you know, I'm very much with you sort of thing, but I can imagine how the situation changes if someone does sort of suddenly onboard like 1 million people in like 2 weeks with their own walleting system, and then, you know, I wonder if it's just in this sort of slight situation that no one knows sort of what works best, and then, you know, when something does seem to work, everyone will sort of go, well, that's that's how you should do it.
You give them a custodial with a way to move it out, you know, to a non-custodial. I mean, maybe, but I still think there's a way. We're talking to partners who are building these systems to sort of create wallets for people and just really keep it invisible and non-obtrusive to people. I don't think people are going to be, I just was really paranoid at the beginning. I think about, I was sort of at the peak of FTX, like,
Yes.
people coming into your game and then, wait, you made me a crypto wallet? I didn't ask for that. Like, what?
Yeah.
But I think if it's subtle enough, like Reddit did it, like you didn't really hear much backlash. The other part of Reddit that no one wants to talk about, or I don't hear as many people talking about, is yes, they onboarded whatever 1 million people into having these NFTs, but like only 5% I've read, took them out or into open markets. So it's a very small percentage, but that's not bad. 5% conversion rate, right? That's not bad.
That might be that might, that, as you say, that's sort of the look at the end result rather than how the sausage is made, sort of thing. But
right,
we'll see. I mean, I guess the interesting thing about games is potentially because games are a progression system. All games have a progression system. There's sort of ways and means in which you can sort of build that into that in a quite sort of subtle, nuanced way as people get to a certain level. I mean, I don't think it's necessarily the best example, but Splinterlands is sort of like the best example I've seen so far, where basically you play the game without any blockchain, and then you pay $10 to get the blockchain bit, which is a bit of a hard sort of upsell.
Right. But if you want to get into that club, kind of.
But you sort of work. People work out whether they want to spend $10 to do that. So I think sort of variations on that may be interesting. Okay, cool.
I agree, and that's a game, by the way, that we've looked at from the beginning. I think they're one of the pillars, really. You don't read about them enough in the press, honestly, or in the Web3 because of sort of been around. But it's
why. I try my best.
Yeah, they're like out there really doing it.
Yeah, absolutely. Cool. Okay, so probably time to wrap up. Anything else we need to talk about?
No.
You mentioned your tournament a little bit. Let's spend the last time, because you have worked really hard on your tournaments, and you've had some sort of influencer types as well. So that sort of plays a bit into your community. So, what was your thinking around the tournaments, and how do you think they've gone? They've sort of been play testing, but also they've been marketing and sort of and how does that also play into where you think as a competitive game, how your tournament's gonna continue to play that role going forward?
Yeah, no, well, again, like I said, this is sort of one of the reasons we chose this genre, because we just thought PvP esports fit so well in the Web3, people competing, earning money. And so we knew we wanted to do them. We had done a small charity tournament, with 8 influencers, creators before this, but this was the first big public tournament. And honestly, we probably should have started with one that was like a few $100s, but go big or go home, I guess. And we worked with Community Gaming. Magic Eden came on board towards the end as a co-sponsor, and we're supporting it all along. But huge props to Community Gaming, who have run hundreds, if not thousands, of tournaments, and they really helped us structure it, what to look out for, and hey, if we really had these features, it would be great. Like, we built in a live, I think it was XML or JSON feed of our leaderboard, just so they could stream it on their Twitch in real time, just for the tournament. And there's several other things, like if we could have spectator mode and things like this. But we learned so much from it. It was a ton of work, I won't lie. Like, we probably, it spanned 2 weekends, and just we worked with so many partners and giving out spots for it. But I think it's important part of this space. Like, it's a way, you think about Web 2, right? We're spending money acquiring users, and having a tournament is a different way of doing that in a way. And it's bringing in, Planet Mojo. I've never played Mojo Melee, but I can win some money. And if it's a nice spread, like we tried to really make it, like I think the top 32 players all won something. Not a bad waste of a few hours for someone. And then suddenly you get a percentage of those people like, hey, this is fun. I want to play this game more, or I want to own the assets, etc. So I think it's just great for community building. And like, there's so many groups in this space. Like, I saw this from the beginning, like all these guilds and Polygon. I don't know if they've announced this yet, but they will be soon. Just like bringing together guilds to have competitions and all these different groups. It's just ripe for that. So, let's have some fun. That's what we're going to do.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not going to go bang on about this because we're at the end, but the whole esports and blockchain stuff is I've always thought is a massive potential. It's obviously really much harder to do because otherwise someone would have done it by now. But you can just see at some point how all these blocks are going to sort of fit together in a way where suddenly the economic model finally works for esports and the game developers and the guilds or esports teams or whatever.
This is a whole other. Yeah, I mean, I'm actually part of this Convergence conference next week. And the CEO of Polygon's going to be there, and I'm talking about esports, which I'm not an expert on, but I've certainly learned a lot. And it is. I think it's great for the space, but then also you have these giant esports teams, right? And I think they're hovering, kind of looking at this space.
Yeah,
There's
they're
been
really,
some deals,
really unsure, I think. But
and so it's going to be interesting to see how that all plays out.
Yeah, cool. We'll save that for another time. Thank you, Mike. That was brilliant. We've covered a lot of ground. I hope people have enjoyed it. I've enjoyed it. So it's my podcast.
Thanks for having me. Great to finally do it.
Yeah,
get to see my messy office with no fake background.
Yeah. Cool. So thanks, guys, for tuning in for another episode. We'll have to come back to Mike in. I'll put my hat on again, and we'll come back in a few months' time to see where we are with the open beta. I think it's good to dig down when stuff's going live. So hope you'll be up for that, Mike. But thanks very much for your time.
Absolutely. Thank you. Thanks for having me. Have a good day, evening.
Cool. And thanks to you for watching, listening, however you're consuming the podcast. Every episode, we're talking to people who are building out this new sort of sector of blockchain gaming. Everyone's sort of got a slightly different take. Everyone's, I think, being pretty innovative in their own ways. We don't really know who's going to sort of win yet. So everyone's, as Mike said, everyone's being sort of.
We're all going to win.
We're all going to win. We're all going to make it. But everyone's sort of learning from everyone else at the moment, and we're in this sort of nice sort of mutual, competitive, collaborative sort of thing. So I hope you're finding it interesting. Please subscribe. Come back next time. See ya. Bye. Oh, I always forget this now. What do you do?